Hey, this is Pastor Mark. Welcome to this episode of the Fultondale First podcast. On today's episode, I sit down with Jordan Law. He is our connections director, among other things, at our church, and you're going to learn how you can connect with others here at Fultondale First and also encourage others to be connected in community.
Welcome to the Fultondale First podcast. Our mission at Fultondale First is to love God, love people, and make disciples. And this podcast is aimed to help you join that mission. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
Well, welcome in to this episode of the Fultondale First podcast. I'm excited you are joining me for today's conversation. I am here with my friend Jordan Law, who predates me by a good bit, in fact, to Fultondale First Baptist, and we're going to have a conversation. He's an integral part to our team and to our church, and so we'll talk through that. So, Jordan, welcome into the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Mark. I have been here so long, I remember when the Gulf used to be called the Gulf of Mexico. I'm that old.
You're that old?
That old.
Oh, that's good. Well, what's funny is I was actually going to use this to introduce you. I was going to say, Jordan, among other things, as father and all these things, he's the king of dad jokes. Well, he just proved it right there. I didn't even have to say it.
Yeah, Sarah did not like that joke as much as you did. There's a good reason
love
for
that joke. I love
There's
it.
a good reason for that.
Well, anyway, I'm glad you're here. So, first of all, Jordan, tell us a little bit about your story, how God got you here, and then maybe how you're involved here, what your role is on staff and in the church.
Sure. Well, we moved here. Let me back up more. Sarah grew up at this church. We started dating. We were in high school, and so I would visit mainly on Wednesday nights. And then I went to Auburn, and she went to Samford, and we got married, and were at Auburn for a couple of years. And then we moved back here. We bought a house just right down the street from the church, and we started to visit, and God just called us here, and we got really connected here. And we could spend hours talking about all of that, but that's how we got connected here.
So I got here 2018, and it wasn't long after that I talked to Sarah and then eventually you about joining our staff team. So what is your role here? And talk a little bit about the ways you serve beyond just the staff team here.
Sure. Well, I am I don't know what the official title is.
Connections.
Life group connections leader, connections coordinator, connections person. I just help lead and make sure our life groups have everything that they need, meeting space, curriculum, information that they need. Help get people connected from starting point, hopefully, into a life group. Or we have some of our other places to connect: men's ministry, women's ministry, senior adult ministry, which is fantastic. Just kind of being that point person for them to, if there's a question about something, they can come to me and ask, and I'll either answer it or figure out how we can respond to it.
Awesome. So, and beyond that, I mean, you serve in different capacities here, obviously. You're a deacon.
I am.
And you're a life group leader yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, you're on the finance team. So I mean, you're basically involved in every single thing we do.
Every single thing. It feels like, and
that's a good thing.
It is. It is. It can be tiring, but it's good. Sure. It's good to serve, and it's also good to rotate off and take time off and allow other people to step up, and that's important too, to help grow other leaders and other people as well.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about your role here, at least what you see God doing. So connections, obviously life groups and those other ministries too. So that we make a big deal of that, obviously, at Fultondale First. We make a big deal of people connecting to each other.
It's part of our disciple-making roadmap, right?
Absolutely. It's part of the roadmap.
Yeah.
It's part of the pathway. So talk about why that's important. Why is it important that people don't just show up and worship, right, and maybe shake hands and then leave and come back and do the same thing the next week? Why is it important that people connect to each other?
All right. It is so vital. And I'm coming at this. Okay, the cameras are really throwing me off. Side story, I remember I was in my second year master's degree at Auburn, studying for finals fall of 2012.
Okay.
And I walk out of the engineering building, and I walk down to Auburn to get some food, and I walk back, and there's camera crews all over. And I'm kind of going, what's going on? And one of them comes up to me on the street and says, "Hey, have you heard the news about Gus Malzahn being hired. What do you think? And I'm exhausted. And I had this full like Michael Scott moment where they were like, look at the reporter, not the camera. And I kept looking at the camera, and they kept saying, stop looking at the camera. So
That's hilarious.
I'm kind of drawn back to don't look at the camera.
That's funny. That's funny. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
You can look at me. You can look at the camera.
I think I'd rather look at the camera.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah. All right. So it's important for us to be connected. God did not design us to be isolated individual creatures. And my perspective, it's a little bit unique because I don't love being around people. I'm an introvert at heart. I just enjoy, I have an office at work and I take phone calls. I have people that pop in and out to ask questions. I go ask questions. I love just to sit in the quiet and just work. That's why working from home is difficult sometimes for me, even though it's an enjoyable thing. But I think God has designed us, and something I've really had to come to terms with is God has designed us to be in community. We don't, we do grow individually. Our spiritual growth is on us. Like that's right. That's on us. But we don't just grow spiritually and then that's it. We grow in community with other people so that we are held accountable, so that we help others to grow. It's just the way that God designed us to be as people and as a church. Yep. He's at Hebrews 10. Don't forsake the gathering of people. And we often just associate that with the worship service. Well, you need to make sure you're in worship, but it really goes beyond that. We need accountability. We need friends. We need people of similar mindset so that we can continue to grow spiritually and we're held accountable. And, the old adage of, you're in, really the Christian life, we're in a rowboat paddling, rowing. That's why it's called the rowboat, I suppose. Upstream, the culture is constantly trying to push us down. We're going to get tired. We're going to get exhausted. We need other people there to take over or to guide us or to let us know, hey, you're veering off in the wrong way. Yeah. We surround ourselves with those kinds of people, and that's going to help us grow spiritually as well. We have a responsibility to other people, and we have a responsibility to allow them to help us. That's right. So it's a really big, important aspect that we choose to ignore sometimes.
I'm guilty of that too. Honestly, even as a pastor, I'm guilty of that. But it is so vital. I've heard somebody say that you cannot grow in isolation. That doesn't it doesn't happen. And I think COVID probably taught us a lesson about the dangers of isolation and the value of connection. I think God, He wired us for that. He made us for each other, right? When in the garden, when He made Adam, He said, it's not good for man to be alone. Well, that hasn't stopped, right? I mean, that's still in play.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the way we do that here. So let's say somebody's watching or listening that is new to our church, or maybe even checking out our church.
I hope that you're listening and not watching.
That's right. I would imagine most people are listening, but and if they're watching, they'll probably start listening.
There you go.
But how are they able to connect here at Fultondale First? What are some ways?
We have some great ways. The first step, we do want you to come, to the worship service. Come worship with us. Know God first. That's right. The first step. And then we want to connect to community. We have an opportunity. We have lots of different life groups that meet on Sunday morning. Some meet Sunday afternoon. Eventually, we'd like to get some that meet during the week. And those are opportunities for you to gather with people, sometimes of the same age, kind of that same life point in life, where you're living life together. Yeah. You're sharing what's happened with you during the week. You're just growing together, like a group of friends or close family or anything like that. We have more broad. We have a men's ministry. We have a women's ministry. We have a senior adult ministry, and they're all geared pretty obvious: men to men, women to women, senior adults to senior adults. And I have come to find out senior adult at heart as well. There's a lot of people. They got some great and fun events, and we're all like, we'd like to.
I would like to be a part of that.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, as pastor, I get to be a part of that.
I know.
So, especially when they go to restaurants, I'm like, I'm in. I am in for that.
That's right.
No doubt.
Yeah. But we have some awesome opportunities to get involved. And one of our goals is we want everybody to understand how they can do that. I think we do a pretty good job of advertising and saying, hey, here's what we have. But one of my goals is to make sure people know, hey, here's where you can go to get information about it. And certainly other life group leaders and members in these groups we have a responsibility to go share. So maybe if you're listening and you are a member, you're involved in a life group, well, we need to be the ones out there trying to make connections with other people. Hey, come join us. We'd love to have you, because just like when we invite people into the worship service with us, people like to be invited into a group. For me, it's a lot easier if somebody invites me, because I'm
Absolutely.
as an introvert, I don't really like being around people a lot. I'm not just going to go, hey, I'd love to join this group of
That's right.
8 people that I don't know. So
I have found that if somebody finds their way to a life group, whether it's on Sunday morning or off campus, if they find their own way, typically they're really outgoing, like the most outgoing people. They're really intentional and aggressive, but there aren't many of those people. Most of the people who who find a connection in a life group is because they were invited. And so, I'm going to ask this question because I didn't tell you I was going to ask this one, but like, let's just say there's somebody who is invited to a life group, or they find their own way to a life group, either way. And they show up to this life group, they don't know a soul. And as I describe this, and you're listening or watching, I want you to think about how intimidating this is. You walk into a room, it could be one of our, life group rooms, like in the fellowship hall, or here on this hallway where we are, or it could be in the worship center where the newcomer life group is. We put it in there so that they at least know the space, right?
You can also choose your seat before the worship service starts.
That's an advantage to the newcomer
advantage. Group. And if you really want to, we'll tell you where Pastor Mark likes to sit, and you can sit in his seat.
That would be great. I love to be thrown for a loop right before I preach. So that's great. So they show up. I mean, what's the expectation, right? What's the expectation for them to get connected to friends? How does that actually, or let me ask it this way. How should that happen in a life group? How should they begin to connect with others?
Well, ideally, you walk into the room or wherever you are, and you're greeted by other people. And, I don't really like that. I would prefer to sit in the back and kind of gauge it, see if I like it when there's only 6 to 8 or 10 people in there. It's kind of awkward.
Yeah.
But ideally,
you're not anonymous at that point.
Yeah. You kind of have to let yourself be known and be a little bit out of your element. But ideally, you are welcomed in by the people there. There's plenty of seats. You sit where you want to, and then you can just engage with people and comfortably talk about what's happened. We talk about football. The guys in the group talk about football or basketball or sports or movies or whatever we're doing. We talk about work. We talk about a lot of them talk about guns and hunting and fishing and all of that. And occasionally we'll talk about something more controversial, like, we've already talked about football and basketball. But,
so that's pretty controversial.
Yeah, Auburn, Alabama, all kinds of.
I'm sure family's a topic.
Family is, yeah. Kids, at least, and I'm really speaking more of my group.
Sure.
We have a lot of families and young, they're not even young kids anymore. They're growing up, but we talk about the struggles of parenting. We talk about the struggles of marriage. We talk about the struggles of work. We talk about the wonderful things that have happened. Hey, we had a great week because of this. We talk about our neighbors that that need help. We talk about projects that we're doing at our house. We're just living life together, which is such a cliche saying, but it's true.
Yeah.
We're just trying to be. We're friends, and we're visiting, and we're hanging out, and we're catching up, and then we take time to pray for one another. We take time to discuss God's word, what was taught last week in the sermon, normally by you. How have we applied that to our lives this week? That's an important part too, not just catching up, shooting the breeze, but how are we growing spiritually? That's we just talked about it. It's an individual thing, but it's also important for us to encourage one another, hold each other accountable. And if we hear about something that someone else is doing, that can encourage us to do the same thing, or maybe just a little bit different. And then in our group, we catch up during the week too. We have a group me, text message. We kind of have both.
Yeah.
And if there's if something happened that week, somebody wants to know, we send that out. We had a couple of weeks back, we had 2 of the families in our group are in the Gardendale Basketball Youth League, and they were playing each other in a game, and so they sent that out, and we were all kind of picking sides, and choosing who we wanted to win. And the answer was we wanted Jeff Rouse's team to lose. I don't know why,
That's awesome.
Yeah. But we hang out, we visit with each other, and it takes time, to grow and to get to know
That's right.
people. But it's a good first step.
I think that's important, right?
Mhm.
It does take time. It doesn't happen overnight. Friends are made over a longer period of time, but you got to start somewhere,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
you have to take that first step.
Mhm.
And so I would encourage those, watching and listening who aren't connected to try a life group, And you mentioned we've got great groups.
Mhm.
A lot of them age graded or seasonal life graded, but we do have a couple multi-generational ones.
Mhm.
Yours is one.
Mhm.
The newcomer group is really all kind of generations. And then I know Andy Blake and Lisa Blake's group that
Mhm.
meets on Sunday evenings. They're multi-generational.
Mhm.
I think the youngest one is in the 20s, and then the oldest one,
Andy's probably like 85,
yeah,
90
at
years
least,
old.
yeah.
Moses
So that's right.
himself.
Actually, I
Right
think
there.
there's somebody in his group a little older than he is, but so it's if that's possible. But so
I didn't say it, Andy.
That's right.
That one came from Mark.
So, but anyway, I didn't make fun of him when he was on the podcast earlier. So I'm just doing it now, not to his face. So.
Sure. Well, that's
Hopefully he'll see
the
this.
best time. We'll know if he doesn't.
That's
Now
right.
we
'Cause
know.
I'll never hear a word.
That's right.
So, what else do you want to tell those watching and listening about connections, about what God is doing here with connections, and what you've seen? Anything else you want to share?
Well, I want to step back just
Sure.
a little bit. We talked about the importance of connections
Mhm.
earlier, and I realize this is going to cause the viewership to just drop off and not off. But I'm a structural engineer,
Mhm.
design buildings, steel, concrete, masonry, wood. The most difficult aspect of a building design is the connection, how you connect a beam to a column or a wall. That's usually the most common area where a failure occurs. You can design a beam, it's pretty straightforward, you know the strength of it. A column, you can know the strength of it, but how do you connect a beam to a column or a wall or a truss, whatever? And it's a really difficult aspect. You have to take a lot of time. You have to put a lot of energy and effort into it to make sure that it's right, and then do a lot of checking in the field to make sure that it was done right. Because if you don't, that's where your failure is probably going to occur.
Wow.
You can have the world's strongest beam, world's strongest column, but if you don't put enough bolts or welds or whatever the connection is, rebar in there, that's where your failure is going to occur. And it's also incredibly difficult to repair after the fact, because that's normally hidden in a wall and it's hard to get access to. I just find that an interesting analogy.
That is an awesome analogy.
Yeah. God has designed us, and we can grow individually. We can be fantastic, phenomenal spiritual followers of Jesus, and not connected to community at all. And we're going to have a lot of struggles and a lot of problems. Not that joining a life group or a men's, women's ministry event is going to, keep you from having any issues. But when we're doing things God's way, when He has designed us to live in community, it just helps out a lot. And that connection that we make with other people, it's what helps keep us grounded. We want to, come back to worship. We're going to worship. We're going to spend time with each other. We're going to encourage our children to grow. We're going to give. We're going to become better disciples because of that connection that we've built with other followers of Jesus. Because the alternative is, if we are not connecting with followers of Jesus, we're going to follow something. We're going to be connected to something else, even if we don't think we are. Whether it's, one of the difficulties I have at home, if I'm not involved and connected, is I'm going to be connected with other things. I'm just going to be hanging out watching YouTube. I'm going to be reading books. I'm going to be, doing whatever outside, and I'm going to be influenced by whatever I'm listening to. Whatever's on my playlist, whatever on whatever podcast I'm listening to. So it's important for us to continue to be bathed in God's, in His grace, but in His way of living.
In the community He's designed for us. Yeah. Wow, that's a great analogy. That's going to make its way into a sermon.
Wow,
I guarantee you that. That's good, because that's
so
true.
Doubled, right?
That's right. Yeah, multiply it times 5. Right there. So I think, you're saying that the structural integrity of a building really depends on the connection between the different elements they're using. And that is so true of us. That is so good, because, I know you probably have to. I know that I've seen it over and over, where people they check the boxes, they do the right things, they read the Bible, they pray, whatever. But man, they absolutely crash and burn when they're not connected. That's where the failure happens most often.
Yeah.
And so that is a fantastic analogy. It's so true. Man. So I'll be thinking about that all day.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I agree 100%. I think it's so important. It's so important. In fact, that's why Jordan is on our volunteer staff as the connections director, because we have to, if something's important, we're going to have somebody responsible for it. And so that's why Jordan.
That's right. We also couldn't find anybody else.
Of course. All right. No, that's not true at all.
There are
That
lots
is not true.
of people, and we have a great staff and a great team that wants to help people grow.
Yeah, we do. In fact, you and Sarah, who's also been on the podcast, his wife, had reverse roles at one point.
That's right.
She was connections, you were discipleship. Yeah. Now we switched it.
We swapped. I don't know why, but it has worked out well for.
I don't know. Something about the Holy Spirit. I don't know.
Probably.
I think the gifting area. I don't know, but
yeah.
At least her passion was discipleship. So, Jordan, thank you so much, man, for just taking the time. As you probably picked up, Jordan has a full-time job, and then he's on our staff in addition to all that. So I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and have a conversation. And I know these people are going to be encouraged. And so we're going to put Jordan's contact information in the show notes and stuff. So if you got a question, you reach out to Jordan. We're also going to put some different ways you can connect. He talked about it: life group, men's, women's ministry, senior adult ministry. We'll put those connection points in the show notes too.
Yeah,
so.
we have some cards and some brochures. I don't know if you could call them brochures, but in the
rack cards.
Yeah. In the, it's not the foyer, it's the lobby.
The lobby,
because it's 2025.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
the
foyer.
Ooh.
We'll go even further back.
Look at that. So you can look at those if you want to get some more information about life groups. You can, indicate on your Connect card or on your Next Step card if you want to get involved. You can do it digitally. Again, it's 2025 if you want to, or you can do it with paper, which I don't mind that either. And we'll get in touch with you and help you find a group. And I want people to know, if you if you begin to attend a group, for example, the newcomers group, you know what? It's not really for me. Well, we've got some other ones, and I'm not going to be offended by it at all.
Right.
We're going to help you find which group is right for you. I would love to visit different groups, because there are some great groups that make some awesome food and have some awesome fellowship.
Great socials.
That's right. But I'm not allowed to visit all of them.
Yeah. So sorry, you're stuck.
I know.
Good thing you like your life group.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jordan. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you guys for joining us. And I hope this conversation has encouraged you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Help us spread the word about the podcast by sharing on socials too. Thanks again, and we'll see you next episode.